We're nearly halfway through the NBA playoffs, and quite a bit has happened so far. The Cleveland Cavaliers and Golden State Warriors are both 8-0 after sweeping their first two series. The Clippers were sent home in the first round, and the Raptors are left pondering their future after another defeat at the hands of Cleveland. Teams are rolling, some are struggling and underachieving, and intrigue is high. Who has surprised, for better or worse? Here's a look at 10 eyebrow-raising aspects of the NBA playoffs so far. 1. Utah rolling over against Golden State. The Jazz looked dangerous enough to give Golden State a real serious challenge after they upended the Los Angeles Clippers in the playoffs opening round. They'd brushed aside one of the better teams in the league in terms of pure talent. Sure, the Warriors are better than the Clippers, but it certainly seemed possible that Utah could take a game or two and push Golden State a lot harder than the Portland Trail Blazers had. Not really. The Warriors swept, and none of the games were decided by single digits. Utah is unquestionably talented, but they were smothered by Golden State's length and skill. The Dubs were superior in every department. It was a rude awakening for a team on the rise, especially if they keep Gordon Hayward in the fold. But this year was not their year. 2. Toronto unable to take a game off Cleveland a year ago. The same Toronto Raptors core took the eventual NBA champion Cavaliers to 6 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Cavs were indisputably favorites again in 2017. But a Raptors team facing a lot of questions about their future didn't really turn up. These two teams had the exact same regular season records at 51-31, but they didn't look like they belonged on the same court for much of this series. Sure, the Raptors can easily explain what the difference was, but the organization was looking for much more than another sweep. They even made a couple of additions during the season, like acquiring PJ Tucker and Serge Ibaka, with the Cavaliers in mind. This series was not even competitive, and there are serious questions about whether this team, as constructed, can challenge for a title. Even Grandma Ujiri says the team needs a culture change. Plus, now they have to find a way to retain free agent to be Kyle Lowry. Of course, this leads us to 3. The gap between Golden State, Cleveland, and everyone else may be even bigger than we thought. The Warriors and Cavaliers are now a combined 16-0 in the playoffs. That won't last, obviously. The conference finals are looming, and even if they both manage to reach the NBA Finals unbeaten, neither of these teams are superior enough to the other to sweep. Still, the first 2 rounds of the playoffs have just demonstrated that the gap between these two teams and the rest of the league is more of a canyon. Yes, the expectation was that Cleveland and Golden State were on a collision course for the NBA Finals again, but it wasn't supposed to be this easy. Some thought Toronto could pose a challenge to Cleveland, and the Los Angeles Clippers could make the Warriors work. The Raptors got swept. The Clippers didn't even get to the second round, and now both teams' potential conference final foes are locked in slugfests against each other. It's hard to see the Warriors and Cavaliers losing in a best-of-7 to anyone but each other. 4. The playoff Clippers strike again. I know, this shouldn't be a surprise. The Clippers managing to botch the playoffs has become a tradition unlike any other. Still, this was rather astounding even by their standards. Most had them earmarked for a second-round loss against Golden State, but Los Angeles didn't even get the opportunity to pull that off. Blake Griffin was injured in the postseason for the second year in a row, and they couldn't overcome that. The Clippers had so much on the line. Everyone in that locker room is surely aware of the fact that this may have been the last chance for this core to win anything, with Griffin and Chris Paul both poised to become free agents. Instead of responding to that pressure, the Clippers wilted, and this Doc Rivers quote seems to indicate that the team had a mentality problem, and has for quite a while. 5. Russell Westbrook was overwhelmed. Quickly, Houston and Oklahoma City were supposed to put on one of the more entertaining series of the first round. James Harden versus Russell Westbrook was filled with subplots, and the two MVP candidates were supposed to put on a show. The players did put on a show, and the games were indeed close, but it was always Houston's series to lose. It came down to a very simple issue: Harden's supporting cast is a lot better than Westbrook's. Those who thought this was destined to be a 6 or 7 game series were left disappointed, as Westbrook got no help while Harden was picked up repeatedly by everyone, the likes of Nene included. While it's too late to matter, the series would actually do more to bolster Westbrook's MVP credentials. The fact that he managed to lead that group to 47 wins is really quite incredible. 6. Teams with a lot of the line wilting under pressure. It was not just the aforementioned Clippers and Raptors that folded earlier and much quicker than expected. The Chicago Bulls had a disappointing season, won the first 2 games against the Celtics in Boston, and promptly folded when Rajon Rondo got hurt. The Indiana Pacers were facing a big off-season with Paul George a year away from free agency, and they would have wanted to show him something encouraging to convince him they could build a championship team around him. They got swept, and George's mouth got him in hot water in the process. These teams, as well as the Atlanta Hawks, who seemingly regress annually now, all had a lot to prove, and ended up proving little. The ramifications could be long-term. 7. Isaiah Thomas fortitude. It's never been a secret that Isaiah Thomas is a tough player who has thrived on adversity. He's made himself an NBA All-Star despite being drafted 60th overall and standing 5'9". Nothing could have prepared him for the sudden and tragic loss of his sister, though, and it was fair to wonder how he would respond. Dealing with such an event is hard enough when you don't have to worry about the NBA playoffs. It wouldn't have come as a shock to anyone if he'd floundered a bit. Thomas did not flounder. His 53-point performance in Game 2 against Washington was nothing short of sensational, and it will likely go down as the defining performance of his playoff run no matter what. He has said he's doing this for his sister, and the strength he's shown is remarkable. It's unreasonable to expect anyone to respond to such trauma the way he has, but he very much did. 8. Boston being taken to the limit repeatedly. The Celtics were seen as the team in the East most likely to trip up the Cavaliers' en route to their conference coronation. They still might, but the number 1 team in the East has sure had to work for it. First, they fell behind 2-0 to the 8th-seeded Chicago Bulls, losing 2 games at home. They caught a break when Rajon Rondo missed the rest of the series and ended up reeling off 4 straight wins. They had to come back from double-digit deficits in the first 2 games of their series against the Washington Wizards, then were blown out of the building twice when the series shifted to the nation's capital. Boston has looked anything but convincing. If they even get past the Wizards, they have a lot of work to do to challenge Cleveland. 9. Even the Spurs have issues slowing down the Rockets at first glance. The Houston Rockets and San Antonio Spurs look like the perfect clash of styles. Mike D'Antoni's high-octane Rockets and Greg Popovica's sturdy Spurs are definitely philosophically different. Defense wins championships, though, and if you believe in that adage, you'd have had to favor the battle-tested Spurs to slow down Houston. The Rockets promptly came out in Game 1, dropped 126 points on San Antonio, and won by 27. The Spurs responded with 2 wins, but then Houston dropped another 125 in Game 4 to win by 21. It has turned into a wild, back-and-forth series filled with a lot of high-octane play, though San Antonio has reclaimed the lead up 3-2. The style probably doesn't suit the Spurs, and it is a little bit surprising that they haven't been able to consistently get it under control, but it's certainly fun to watch. 10. There haven't been that many surprises in the grand scheme of things. Everyone who is supposed to be here at this stage of the playoff is here. The Warriors and Cavaliers are well positioned to meet again in the NBA Finals. The best remaining teams are battling it out for the right to play them. The biggest, and only, upset so far has been Utah upending the Los Angeles Clippers, a team that notoriously underachieves at this time of year, and even that was just a 5 seed over a 4. Ultimately, it's surprising how straightforward the playoffs have been so far. It may well mean that we're in for a wild ride in the conference finals, though.